This is Kento. He has the strongest character in the game, and the most watched on Mujijdravarse, famous by the nickname King. Everyone is addicted to him, spending hours watching him kill the final boss, and clearing the most feared dungeon on the server. But on the day he was finally going to reveal his face to his fans, his brother Reito Jinguji cut the stream, beat him up, announced he had bought the account, and took King's place in front of everyone. Out of nowhere, Kento lost the fame he built from scratch, and still had to watch his brother on TV, being praised like he was the big genius behind everything. After hours feeling depressed, he decides to make a comeback, and says he'll do whatever it takes to destroy his brother. No account and no money. He took out a heavy loan of 25,000 and bought a new virtual reality capsule. Kento entered the game, created a new avatar called Shadow, and set 2 goals. He needed to make money fast, and he needed to get revenge on Reito. In the tower tutorial, the current record belongs to his old character, King. Even with a brand new character and stats all at 0, Kento still had all the knowledge and skill from the tutorial before. The timer started, and he takes off clearing floors like it's nothing. Every floor he passed he broke a record. On the 6th floor, the levels were already high, but not for him, who defeated the goblin by throwing a dagger right into its throat. The poor dog tried to get revenge, but the MC killed it without breaking a sweat. He was already heading to the 7th floor, and only 2 minutes had passed. Shadow was unstoppable, climbing to the 7th, 9th, 10th floor, and reaching the final boss. This ugly thing is level 12, a big gap compared to him, who is level 1. Even so, the MC didn't back down, went straight at it, trusting his own skill. The monster got lost. In that moment he saw the opening, drove the dagger right into the middle of the monster's forehead, and finished the tutorial dungeon. When he opened the leaderboard, he saw his name in first place, breaking the tutorial world record. But now the real challenge begins, because a hidden mission was unlocked. Looking up, he sees the shadow of a flying monster, and he gets scared because he's on a brand new account now, and defeating this monster is going to be really hard since it's level 50. The MC stares coldly, grabs the dagger and goes straight at the monster. The dragon flies around, just spitting fire from above. He spots a pile of rocks, charges forward, pulls off a massive jump and starts slicing the dragon non-stop. The timer only had 1 minute left, so the guy tries every way possible to cut the dragon, but nothing seems to work. While falling onto the dragon's neck, he spotted a stone and found the weak point. Right there, he raised the dagger and drove it into the stone, splitting it in half. The dragon starts to crumble and was completely defeated. In 14 minutes and 59 seconds, he set a new record on the hidden mission. His reward was a magic chest, and when he opened it, he received a legendary sword called Koro, which has absolutely broken stats. On top of being a rare sword, it also has consciousness and can talk, meaning this is the most busted sword in the game. In no time, he arrives at the Village of Beginnings. When he says he didn't expect the king to be there, the sword immediately shuts him down. Thinking it over, he says that even if the item's stats are low, it's still legendary, which means it's worth a ton of money. Kuro tells the kid to stop thinking about that, and says it's the best sword in the world. We're taken to the Forest of Beginnings. Shadow is ready to level up and hunt high-rank items, since he needs cash. After a while, we see him finishing off a goblin, while the sword tells him to stop cutting down such pathetic little creatures. Noticing he's reached level 4, the protag decides to put points into agility, but when he opens the panel, he finds out the sword's stats went up too. Explaining it, Kuro says its ability lets it grow along with its owner. Curious, the kid asks what that other stat is, but the sword says it doesn't know. Suddenly, Shadow hears voices and quickly figures out there are 7 more people nearby. We see a group of players thanking Sudi, who smiles and says her job is supporting newbies. The protag notices that even though he can sense 7 presences, he's only seeing 4 people, which means 3 of them are hiding in the shadows. The demonic sword says that's pretty common when people want to hunt new players. Since he can't stand bastards who prey on the weak, the kid decides to step in. The sword says it figured he was the justice type, showing it hasn't stopped reading his thoughts for even a second. Seeing him, Sudi asks if he's a newbie too. When he confirms it, the other players get excited, but Shadow says this isn't the best place for beginners to level up. Then he blocks the hunter's attack, and the guy realizes the kid doesn't need help at all. Watching the fight, the other players ask what they should do, shouting. The kid tells them to get out of there, but then more hunters jump out from the bushes. The gang leader attacks again, making the protag realize this is far from over. One boy decides screw it, and charges in. But before the protag can do anything, the kid takes a fatal hit. Shadow is left stunned, and a message appears saying the boy won't be able to play for 24 hours. The hunters move in on the girls and tell them not to worry because they'll be joining him soon. Taunting them, the boss says he'll keep things nice and calm while he focuses on defense. Eyeing the money, one of the assassins says it's all thanks to King. Then he apologizes for letting that slip. Suddenly, Sodi notices something changed about the hooded guy, giving off insane pressure. The kid tells the man to say that again and explain what King has to do with any of this. The hunter says he has no idea what he's talking about, and before he can react, he gets his head taken off. With his eyes glowing, the protag says he's been hearing that name a lot, so he wants the truth. Kuro asks what's going on and why the kid isn't listening. Realizing he's completely given in to his rage, it tries to calm things down since it's been through that before. A message appears saying an account deletion duel field has been activated, and the target player will be eliminated. Seeing what the protag can do, the mercenary leader wonders what the hell is happening. The player who'd been killed shows up and starts running from the shadow claws, but he gets caught, and while he begs for help, he's sucked into a pit. Breaking into a cold sweat, Sudi still doesn't understand anything, wondering what that hand is, and why her ally's corpse is the only one that didn't disappear. Shadow tells the kid to stop being scared, the hunt has only just begun. Thinking to himself, the mercenary concludes this isn't the Yaiji verse he knows. Face to face with the player, the protag asks why, and who gave the order to kill beginners. Yelling, the assassin says he's following King's orders, and it's not his fault. Consumed by hate, the kid starts landing brutal strikes, then he asks why they're doing this, and Sudi, crying, says she doesn't know. Delivering the final slash, the protag says that in that case he can just die. With the elimination, the account deletion duel field is deactivated. Noticing the kid looks kind of dizzy, one of the girls asks if he's okay before thanking him for saving them. Our guy says it was no big deal, but the player in the hat disagrees and says that when he was fighting, he looked just like King himself. Xiaobei decides to step away and sit down. Worried, Kuro asks if he's alright, but the kid doesn't answer. He asks what that field from earlier was. Feeling the pressure, the sword tells its owner to tone down his killing intent, since its memory data is protected, and the only thing it knows is that the duel field is where players' accounts get put up as stakes, so those giant hands are called the Hands of God. They're responsible for swallowing players' account info, stopping them from reincarnating because that data is basically like a soul. Thinking about it, our guy says it's insane for a skill to have that much power. Then he realizes he ended up doing something similar to what Rito did. The sword says the kid's emotions caused a glitch in the protection system, and that its creator helped develop the game but got fired. And the last thing it felt before being reprogrammed was extreme agony. Standing up, the protagonist says that's good. Since he swore revenge on King and says he believes that story, he decides to check the items he picked up. Kuro says the guy's left hand is shaking and that he's going to pretend he didn't see it. With the Falcon bracelet, the Black Wolf tonic, and the Venom Fang dagger, Shadow says the enemies had some decent loot, and he'll auction off the rest. When someone asks if he's really that broke, he says that either way, he can only do what he needs to do if he defeats rare monsters. Then we're taken to the Lost Road. After walking for a while, Kuro asks if his owner got lost. Denying it, the protagonist says that after they leave the camouflaged labyrinth, they'll reach the NPC's base. They look a lot like humans, and can be useful for gathering info about rare monsters. The sword asks if he doesn't have any human friends. Our guy says he's always played solo, then quickly changes the subject when he smells smoke. Thinking about his brother, he says that besides feeling powerless, he knew something important was being destroyed, and now he needs to figure out how that happened. Walking through the burning village, he calls out asking if anyone's there, until he hears a little girl named Rin crying for help. Shadow manages to pull the NPC out of the rubble before the worst happens. Then he grabs a healing potion to help her. But when she opens her eyes, she screams and backs away. The protagonist says he's there to help. Crying, the little girl asks if he's going to call the king. We find out a group of strangers showed up in the village and took all the adults, under King's command. When asked if he's okay, Shadow says yes and tells Kuro not to worry. Then he says it's time to kill the people responsible for that tragedy. Up ahead, they see a group of men beating up a villager. The guy tries to protect himself with his hands. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind one of them, and with a single strike takes another life. The demon sword says that dagger looks hard to use, and when he asks if it's jealous, it denies it, saying it just doesn't like that weapon. After wiping out almost the whole gang, Kanto says he needed practice so he could use it when it really mattered. All of a sudden, someone starts screaming. The mercenary leader says the guy screams way too much for an NPC that's supposed to just give information. Crying, the guy says he only wants the leader, which makes the killer decide to just end this already. But before he can, one of his allies gets his head taken clean off. After taking out the captain, the protagonist says he's way too slow, and as he walks up he asks if the guy on the ground is okay. The guy thanks him for the help, and when he hears about Rin, he says he wants Shadow to help his people move forward. Since their leader was captured too, our guy agrees. Then we're taken to where the hostages are being held. Worried, Kuro asks his owner to stay calm so he doesn't trigger that field ability again. As he rushes in to attack, he says he knows. The villains don't even get a chance to react. Only 4 are left, panicking, and one of them asks who the guy even is. Suddenly another mercenary shows up holding Rin's dad hostage, and orders him not to move. The villagers freak out when they see their leader like that. Surrounded, the protagonist can hear his sword begging him to stay calm. But even so, he says he's going to kill them all. One of the bandits says that's their line, and that, if the guy drops the sword, he can leave. Telling the man to shut up, our boy activates the account exclusion field, sending all the mercenaries into a panic. The dude with his face covered manages to block the first strike, and asks what his partner is waiting for to finish off the hostage. Shaking all over, he realizes he can't move because of the poison from the protagonist's dagger. With a dark look, the protagonist says it's hunting time. Seeing his buddy bite the dust, the frozen mercenary begs the kid not to come any closer, if he wants the village leader to stay alive. Showing how fast he is, Xiaobei says that distance is nothing to him, and then lands a killing blow. With the job done, he even gets to see God's hands at work. So after a while we see the protagonist asking if Dalneo is okay. The man confirms it, then asks how he knows his name, and when he doesn't get an answer, he says they should go outside. When the two show up, a woman runs over and hugs her husband, while Rin hugs our boy, handing over the assassin's ring. The leader says it's to show everyone's gratitude. Suddenly Yuba shows up and asks what kind of lame thank you that is. Looking at the kid, the old man thanks him on everyone's behalf, and says if there's anything else they can do, just say the word. The protagonist thanks him, making the old man remember he was king. Getting straight to the point, Elder asks if the young guy is looking for information, then hands him a paper with the location of some place. Shadow's jaw drops, while the elder tells him to get ready for the trip. They shake hands, and the protagonist says he's heading out, but thanks them for the hospitality. Yuba says everyone will walk him to the exit, even though they hate to see him go. Rin gives the young guy flowers as thanks for saving them. That makes our boy remember his days as a knight. Watching him leave, Dalneo thanks him for his kindness. But Kincio decides to ask why the village was attacked in the first place. The man says that from what he heard, the mercenaries were after information only Elder knew. Thinking about it, the protaka wonders what the hell Rito is plotting. Suddenly, Kuro yells to warn them about danger. Turning around, our boy comes face to face with an enemy about to strike. Using all his agility, he dodges a flurry of attacks, but when he loses his balance, he realizes he might be screwed. At the last second, he manages to grab the demon sword and block. He says it's a shame the woman's sneak attack didn't work. Backing up, the yellow-eyed girl asks who he is and what happened there, while the protaka wonders if she's one of King's allies. Getting ready to swing again, she says not many people even know about that village, so she demands to know why he's there. They clash swords and realize their strength is pretty evenly matched. Worried, our boy says she's on a totally different level compared to the other lackeys. He kicks her back and asks why she's doing this if she's that skilled. Trembling, the enemy asks how he dares do that to her friends, then charges again right after. Putting all her strength into it, she says she got lost in her rage and that massacring people was a mistake. Yelling, Kato says he only did it because of them. Dalneo says he'd like to do something but it's impossible. Koru asks if the kid really thinks he can win. Smiling, he says yes, and slams his enemy full force into the wall. On the ground, the girl asks if his speed suddenly went up, then says she can't afford to lose. Walking up, Shadow says it's over for her. Seeing the demon sword, the woman asks why the prota has it. Stunned, our boy asks how she knows about Koro. Suddenly Rin grabs both of their arms and tells them to stop. Freaked out, they tell the girl it's dangerous, and that's when the two of them realize they're not who they thought. Ari says if the guy knows it was a misunderstanding, he should put the sword away. Smiling, he says she should start apologizing, but neither of them seems willing to back down. Hearing the little girl begging them to stop fighting, the prota says the woman can thank the kid. When asked, the sword says it doesn't remember that name, but it might if its memories came back. After calling Kuro an idiot, The prota asks how the girl knows about the item, but when he doesn't get any answer, he says he's gonna head out because he's in a hurry. Rin walks up and tells him to come back anytime. The main guy says he'll be back soon, then turns and leaves. In her head, Ari thinks she'll never apologize. Since the kid absorbed a bunch of players, still she wants to know if he's actually good enough to be her ally. After walking for a while, Xiaobei reaches a desert and starts checking the map he got. It shows where the monsters that drop expensive items are. Remembering his debts, he says there's a lot on the line, including his livelihood and his life. Koru asks if that thing in the sky is a bug, but the main guy says it's a camera. It's gonna film his debut as a streamer. Out of the sand, a huge monster pops up, with teeth that look like they're made of gold. All set, Kento says it's time to talk more about the jewel turtle. Once he realizes the goal is to gather materials instead of killing the monster, the sword says that actually sounds fun. People start joining the stream, which makes him smile, because honestly, even with everything, he really likes that game. Besides the turtle, a desert worm bursts out of the ground. Locked in, our boy lands his first hit. It kicks up a blast of sand, and the worm is instantly done for. One of the 6 viewers asks what's going on, and while the others comment on how insane that attack was, Shadow asks if Koro can absorb the monster, but he says the exclusion field is only for PvP. Thanking them for the donations, he tells the viewers he's going all out now. In the real world, a kid says he was waiting for another stream to start, but he's gonna stick around for this one. Next up are the desert birds, and our guy dodges them like he can see the future. The demon sword asks if this isn't way too easy for him. He just says this is where things really start. He sprints, jumps into the air, and when asked if he's gonna start gathering resources, he says no, because the deeper you go, the rarer the drops get. Koru says in that case he's taking a break. Turning around, the main guy says he's actually got one more little thing to do. A cactus monster fires its spikes without hesitation, forcing him to use the sword to block. The sword yells that it hurts like hell, and that it's not a shield. Shadow says cactuses have a detection trap, so he'll dodge and block the attacks, and he'll need Koru's help to climb up to the top. After a bunch of yelling, the guy finally makes it to the top of the turtle's shell. Offended, the legendary sword asks how he dares treat a legendary item like that. Suddenly, another creature shows up. It's a level 40 griffin, with the wind from its wings whipping around. The main guy's eyes go wide. When the enemy attacks with its claws, Kento says the level gap between them is more than double. Still he swings, because he knows he won't lose on attack speed. Koru asks if it's over already, but the kid says not yet. Still in the air, the griffin charges up a fireball and hurls it straight at him. He dodges, thinking the griffin will have to come down once it runs out of fireballs, and that'll be the moment it's totally exposed. Everything goes exactly like he planned, and Xiaobei starts looking for the pressure point that leads to the enemy's weak spot. As soon as he finds it, he throws his dagger near the bird's wing, and because of the poison, the wing gets paralyzed. Taking the opening, the main guy lands the finishing blow, and the creature disappears. Donations and congratulations pour in, and now 500 viewers are watching the stream. Signing off, Kento thanks everyone for showing up, and says he'll do another stream soon. He also says he's putting the items up for sale, so everyone should check the rare item market board. Noticing the numbers drop super fast, he wonders what happened. Then he finds out King just went live, which makes him furious. Seeing what's going on, Koru tells him to stay calm and asks what he's gonna do with the item haul. Remembering he's got other priorities, the main guy thanks the sword. The sword tells him to hurry up and move, before asking who King is, and why the kid gets so tense whenever he hears his name. Back in the real world, Shadow hands over all the money he owed the loan shark. The guy asks if it's clean money. Confirming it is, our boy asks if he can go now. The guy says yeah, since everything's been paid off. Alone in his room, he walks over to the window and wonders if the kid had that same look on his face the first time he went there. Back home, the main character favorites the YGG Reverse Community's strategy room page. We find out the items he collected sold for more than expected, which made it possible to pay off the debts. Our boy decides to hop into King's stream and notices a bunch of viewers absolutely love watching him. The knight shows up, kicking off yet another mission. He says he doesn't care about the people who hate him and left the stream, because his focus is giving his fans the best entertainment they could ask for. Shocked, the main character tells King to stop, even though he knows it's pointless. We hear screams coming through his headphones, and he says that if this keeps going, YGG Reverse is going to be destroyed. Keno jumps back into the game immediately, and Koru asks where he's rushing off to. We find out he's headed to Nonglad. because after wiping out an entire village and killing thousands of people, King announced that would be his next stop. Thinking it over, the main character wonders if the merchants got attacked because of him, and decides he never should have streamed. The moment he reaches the city, he can already hear screams coming from residents being attacked with zero mercy. His eyes go wide when he sees how bad the destruction is. One of the mercenaries asks who he is, but when he doesn't answer, the guy says he'll kill him too, so he can join King. Hearing that makes our boy get flooded with rage again, and with a single strike, he leaves the thug one arm shorter, then immediately summons the hands of God. With the duel field activated, Shadow charges the enemies. Koro says the assassin's ring is really good, since it gave a 20% boost to damage on sneak attacks. A new skill called Ice unlocks, and the main character wonders if the stat he used absorbs his enemy's abilities. Grabbing a guy by the throat, he demands to know where King is. After all, he knows King is streaming right now. When he gets no answer, our boy finishes off another bandit. Suddenly, a player with an axe catches his attention. Kentu asks who he is. Smiling, the guy asks what Kentu's gonna do if he says he's the one behind all the killing. Getting straight to it, the main character says he'll kill him. As he attacks, the enemy says that's scary, but even so, Kentu better give it everything he's got if he really thinks he can beat him. Blocking the blow, Kentu realizes the guy's stronger than he expected. Noticing Kentu backing off, the enemy says that'll save him time, since Kentu's such trash he's not even worth fighting. When asked if he's okay, our boy tells Kuro not to worry. The axe guy charges again, because he can tell it's not over yet. Dodging, the main character figures he'll need to use speed to his advantage. The mercenary senses the danger and counters. Surprised, Shadow asks if he used instant acceleration. Confirming it, the guy says that even so, Shadow still won't be able to beat him. The demon sword asks again if its owner is okay, then says enemy reinforcements are right behind them. Letting out a breath, our boy says he's only just getting started. The enemy asks if he's the type who goes crazy because he's scared of dying, which would make sense, since with the rain messing things up, even the skies aren't on his side. Disagreeing, the main character says actually they are, and then uses his newly acquired ice skill. The assassin's feet get stuck to the ground from the ice lock. Getting looked down on, the axe guy says he's tired of playing around. Appearing behind the kid, Shadow tells him to relax and enjoy it a little longer. Then he decides to deal with the other opponents, who get quickly absorbed by the duel field's ability. The gang leader wonders how that's even possible, and why the bodies aren't disappearing. All of a sudden, Koru starts screaming, turning everything red. Using all his strength, the main character tries to keep holding the sword, which looks like it's leveling up. The axe guy shows up and says he won't let the kid do whatever he wants, but he gets knocked back before taking a direct hit. Our boy says that thanks to him he's gotten even stronger, then pulls out the sword and unleashes the hands of God. The weapon says now it's over, but Kento looks sad because he couldn't save anyone. Koru tells him to look behind him, but he says all that's left is the city in ruins. Suddenly, someone walks up and thanks them for being saved, revealing they'd been hiding the whole time. Pretty quickly, more people show up too. The protagonist relieved he made it in time. But then, out of nowhere, someone else appears and says that was incredible. Hearing that voice, our boy's eyes go wide. Standing there, King says it's finally time to meet the guy everyone's been talking about. Then the two of them stare each other down before the fight begins. Catching the protagonist off guard, the knight calls him by his real name. Shadow starts stuttering, totally confused. Koru asks what that's supposed to mean. Our boy says it was that guy who took King away from him. Tired of waiting, Reito swings. He sends the kid flying back, and even though he's still standing, he realizes the shockwave alone did a ton of damage and figures he can't win because of the level gap, which means he's about to be defeated by the character he created. The demon sword asks if he's not going to fight. The protagonist starts remembering everything Jinguji took from him in real life, and finally decides that in Yelgo Dribwars, he can't afford to back down. Saying his name is Shadow, he charges in and says he's not going to be Reito's little toy anymore. King activates his shield to protect himself, and says the kid's really just a loser, so he should give it up already. Seeing his HP is low, our boy activates his instant acceleration skill, but he gets stopped by the Imperial Sacred Formation, which nullifies any and all damage. Kuro says it's not working, and asks if he's got a plan. He says yes because it's true his opponent's skill works as long as he has enough MP, but what King doesn't know is there's a way to get past that insane Sacred Formation. Putting the plan into action, the protagonist thinks he needs to keep attacking until he creates an opening. Jinguji tells him to just die already, and that's when Xiaobei finds an opening and strikes. catching his brother off guard when he actually takes damage. It turns out if King gets hit multiple times in the exact same spot, his skill gets cancelled, and doing that is basically exploiting a bug you'd only know about if you really knew the game. The knight says even so, he only lost 1 point. Not caring, Kento says it's still damage he dealt. Playing dirty, Reito says he's got something to show him. On a big screen, our boy sees the people he tried so hard to protect, trapped in a cage. One guy asks what they did to deserve that, but the guard attacks him. Seeing Shadow stutter, King asks if he understands what position he's in now. Then he reveals he's got people imprisoned in a bunch of places besides Nonglade, so if the kid moves even a little, all the villages will be destroyed. Raising his sword, the knight says the strongest always wins, meaning standing up to him is pointless, whether it's in the game or in real life. Keeping his little show going, Reito activates his Imperial Sword Dance skill. Flames shoot toward the protagonist, while Kuro tells him to dodge, but it seems like it's too late, and a countdown starts. Falling off the cliff, Shadow wonders if he lost, and realizes he needs to revive fast, so his character doesn't get deleted. With 10 seconds left, the protagonist says he can't give up, because he swore revenge. The problem is he doesn't know any way to beat Jinguji, which just makes it even more frustrating. At the very last second, he starts screaming, but then, all of a sudden, the assassin's ring starts glowing, leaving our boy completely shocked. Sometime later, he wakes up inside a room and wonders what happened. Leaning against a piece of furniture, Koru says the kid should be asking what some stranger is doing in the room. Suddenly hands wrap around Shadow's neck, and a voice asks if he's awake. The protagonist quickly backs away freaked out, while the eye patch guy asks if Yuba got it wrong when he recognized him. When the sword questions him, our boy says he doesn't know that guy, at least not with his current character. We find out there are characters in the game known as the 5 great NPCs, a swordsman, a monk, an archer, a mage, and an assassin. So back when he was king, Kento went on a mission with this guy, Zaji, who's known as the greatest assassin of them all. The protagonist asks why he saved him. Zaji says it was because of the ring, which apparently has some hidden function. Arms crossed, the young guy says he asked Yuba to give the item to someone brave, because whoever got it would become his disciple. Surprised, Shadow realizes this is his chance. But Zaji says the old lady must have been mistaken, since the kid lets people get way too close way too easily. So once he's healed up he should just leave. Shocked and refusing to be ditched, the protagonist says he's too weak and can't protect anything on his own, so he should have been thinking about how to get stronger. Fearing the worst, Kuro tells his owner to calm down. Suddenly, the assassin says he changed his mind, and tells the young guy to meet him outside for a test, because if he can use that feeling properly, he might actually become someone. Getting to his feet, Shadow says the plan now is to become a disciple and level up, then destroy the officials of Nordic Peak and take back everything Reito stole. Outside, Zaji talks to someone. That person says they only agreed because Yuba asked, but they don't recognize the young guy either. It's Ari, who before leaving says she has a strong feeling she and Shadow will meet again. Once the protagonist is ready, he and the assassin start the test. Thinking to himself, Kento says he can't land a combo. Meanwhile, the guy with the eye patch asks if he's not going to use his skills, so our boy activates Ice Block. Then he uses instant acceleration to attack from behind, but Zaji dodges with a flip, and jumping up into a tree, says his speed is decent compared to most people. When asked, the protagonist reveals he's level 30, which makes the master conclude he needs to reach at least level 50. After passing the test, a mission unlocks. Turning around, Shadow says he'll hit that level in a week, but the assassin says he's got only 3 days if he wants to become his disciple. Realizing he needs to gain 20 levels in 72 hours, our boy figures he won't be sleeping anytime soon. In another fight, Zaji says his moves are getting predictable. Then he attacks the young guy from behind. He hits the ground and realizes he can't move. The master asks if that's all he's got. Remembering he needs to defeat King, the protagonist tries to get up and kicking out, says he has to beat the king. The guy tells Kento to let his killing intent fill his whole body while keeping a cool head, because that's the bare minimum to be his disciple. Suddenly, a congrats message pops up, and finally the protagonist reaches level 50. Stretching, the assassin says he thought it would take 5 days, which makes our boy realize he'd been acting kind of irrational. After getting the skill Shadow Path, Shadow is confused, but Zaji says it's his attribute, and he'll show him how it works just once. He disappears into the shadows, and reappears behind the protagonist, saying the skill lets the user move into other people's shadows. Koru says that's interesting, and works really well with the assassin's ring. Stepping closer, the master says he has a favor to ask. Then he reveals he's heard about never-before-seen monsters, and about swordsmen and mages going missing. So since things are dangerous, having a partner would help. Our boy agrees without hesitating, since if he clears the mission, he'll get rewards. We cut to another place, where someone complains that a specimen is a failure. We see two creatures inside two tubes. Pressing a button, the guy with fire-colored eyes says that's a good reaction, and after getting a mission to defeat a level 50 player using a modified monster, he says he has to complete it for the sake of his research. Sometime later, in the Cardis swamp, Kento realizes Zaji wasn't kidding about the monsters. The guy says the target is in the mansion, and that those creatures aren't modified. Seeing a bunch of comments popping up, he says he didn't know Xiaobei was a streamer. Our boy apologizes for the noisy crowd, but the assassin says it's fine, and that getting this much attention actually gets him pumped. Charging in, he activates his skill, Threadline Sword Dance, wiping out a bunch of monsters all at once. Thinking, the protagonist realizes the guy really was holding back when he fought him. Zaji says he'll handle the rest and leave the mansion to Shadow. The protagonist heads straight into the cult's HQ, and when the viewers ask what's going on, he says all he knows is the cult's been causing trouble, and that the stream might cut out in the no-filming zone. Kuro says that's a weird way to put it, but Kento insists he can't let people see the duel arena. After checking the map, he makes it to the 3rd floor and opens the doors to see what's next. An enemy shows up, but it's so cute, our boy actually wonders if it's even really an opponent. Suddenly someone tells him to look behind him. He turns around and finds himself face to face with a whole horde of creatures. One of them immediately charges, but it gets wiped out in no time. Thinking it over, the protagonist says those have to be the coded creatures. Then someone appears and says he didn't expect a mass-produced chimera to get taken down in a single hit. He adds that it's been a long time since he's seen Shadow. Our boy is confused, and the guy reminds him he's Sudi, the newbie hunter, and that he made a new account just to get revenge. Yelling, he summons another creature, and after a horned gorilla appears, he says it's his turn to have some fun. In the blink of an eye, stuff goes flying, and the guy is left staring with his mouth open. Sitting on top of the gorilla, the protagonist asks who it was again that he said he was going to kill. Appearing behind the mercenary, he takes the chance to ask if the guy is the mastermind behind the cult. Panicking, Sudi yells for Kento to get away from him. Our boy does, then pops right back up and asks if he's trying to get another account deleted. Shaking like crazy, the guy says the leader is behind the big doors and asks if he's safe now. Proving he's not, the protagonist kills him, saying he better never show his face in front of him again. In the real world, a spectator says Shadow is somehow terrifying and awesome at the same time. The protagonist walks into the lab like he owns the place. Kuro says the place is incredible, and wonders who could be modifying the monsters. Quickly, our boy reaches the last door, but it's locked, so he uses his sword to slice through the wood and make a dramatic entrance. A little further in, the scientist says that was pretty violent, introduces himself as Irides, an officer from Nordic Peak, and asks if the kid came to cause trouble in his research sanctuary, which means he's the killer they were warned about. With a creepy look, the researcher says Shadow showed up at the perfect time, because he just finished his creation. Curious, our boy starts catching Rin's scent. Irides says he took data from an NPC and fused it into a monster, creating his best work yet. When called, the Dragon Knight stands up. The protagonist is completely stunned, while the creature looks like it's laughing. Seeing the little girl trapped in the back, he says his worst fear just came true, and gets ready to put an end to that horror show. During the fight, Kuro asks why the kid isn't counterattacking. Our boy says it's because there are NPCs fused into the creature. The Dragon Knight breathes blue flames, while also draining the NPC's life force. The protagonist dodges another deadly hit, wondering if there's any way to save those people, and if the answer might be those glowing bracelets around the enemy's wrists. Laughing, Irides says he knows the kid won't be able to win. Blocking another strike with his sword, Shadow decides to test his theory. Then he leaps into the air and reappears right up close to the dragon, saying he's about to show how dual swords are really used. Appearing on the enemy's back, our boy slashes at the bracelets and there's a burst of light. Shocked, the researcher asks how that's even possible, and orders his creation to focus on who it's supposed to kill. Obeying, the dragon blasts fire at the kid, who just watches the destruction happen. Right after that, he uses his Shadow Path ability and appears beneath the knight. To finish cutting the bracers off, he strikes again, and the creature starts screaming, before collapsing to the ground, totally defeated. Worried, Shadow wonders what happened to the NPCs, and notices the data rings are turning into light. They keep floating there, glowing, and the protagonist prays they're okay. Suddenly, the light gets stronger and the hostages drop to the floor. Rin opens her eyes and sees Kento running toward her. She's happy when he hugs her, and he says he's glad she's okay. Stunned, the scientist asks how the NPC data got restored and realizes his mission failed. On the ground, he complains that he couldn't achieve a unique class and says he'll never forgive Xiaobei for it. With the press of a button, the monsters trapped inside the tubes are released, and they get ready to carry out their creator's revenge. The main guy steps in front of the innocent people, and then yells for everyone to get out of there right now. The scientist says it's going to be fun watching him fight while trying to protect the NPCs. A demon rat jumps on our boy and bites his sword. Thinking to himself, he says the creatures aren't that strong, but it's a whole different story when you've got people to protect. Rin ends up getting grabbed by a monster and starts screaming, forcing the protagonist to act immediately. Pretty soon the creatures surround the good guys, while Irides orders them to just finish it already. Suddenly, someone shows up and asks if Shadow needs a hand. It's Jing, and without much effort, he wipes out the enemies. The researcher, freaking out, asks what one of the 5 great NPCs is doing there. Our boy tells his master to take Rin and the others outside, and says he'll come after he deals with the scientist. The mercenary says got it, and that he'll see him later. Activating his dual field skill, Kento asks Irides if he's ready to regret everything he's done. On the ground, the guy begs to be spared, but the protagonist says it's time for the execution. Then someone else appears, and says that's going to be a problem, because he's not going to allow the scientist to be killed. Smiling, Kento doesn't even hesitate, and goes straight into attack, forcing Shadow to use all his agility just to get his sword up in front of his body. After being blocked, the white-haired guy says this is going to be fun. Our boy thanks him for the compliment. While thinking about how strong his opponent is, the enemy says he knows Shadow uses a pretty dangerous technique, and when he sees the protagonist's reaction, he realizes his guess was right. Introducing himself as one of the 4 officers at Nordic Peak, Ken says it's a pleasure to play with him. Then he attacks right away, using his skill called Lupus Strikes. Even while tanking the impact, the protagonist realizes the technique hits harder with every single blow. The enemy asks how many attacks he thinks he can take. Worried, our boy tries to back off, but his legs get pinned down by lizards. With one strike he takes them out, but more show up. Irides asks how long Ken plans to drag the fight out. Instead of taking the chance to finish Shadow off, the guy walks up and says that would ruin the fun, while the researcher yells that he should be more grateful for the support. Kuro asks if it wouldn't be smart to run while the 2 of them argue. Disagreeing, the protagonist says this is their chance to take both of them down at once. Annoyed at the interruption, Ken says there's no avoiding what's coming, so from now on he's going all out. The demon sword says its owner needs to run immediately. Since the duel field is open, and because it's an absolute field, nobody is exempt from the rules, not even him, which means if the boy loses, he'll be swallowed by the hands of God. Not giving him time to escape, the white-haired guy starts landing lupus hits again, saying he really is strong for surviving 10 straight attacks. Just when everything seems hopeless, someone unleashes the sky-splitting strike, forcing Ken to retreat immediately. Ari shows up and says they can't stop the enemy, not right now. When the protagonist asks why she's there, she just says she'll handle Irides, while thinking she's really only there to see if Shadow is worthy of wielding Kuro. Going back on the offensive, the fist fighter says the woman seems to trust the kid a lot, and he'll have to ask her why after he wins. The demon sword keeps taking most of the hits. Backing up, our boy realizes that now that the guy's powered up, he can't afford to get hit. Charging in, Ken says there's no escape, then throws a strike using the fluid flow fist dance. The protagonist barely saves himself again, and his opponent says it's been a long time since a fight made him feel like this, so he missed on purpose, just to show the kid he shouldn't try to run anymore, and should just have fun. We see our boy breaking out in a cold sweat. Back there, Ari ends up collapsing to the ground. The scientist says that's the price for them ruining his research lab. Seeing the huge creature, Kuro tells Shadow to run, so he and the woman don't get swallowed by the duel field. Thinking of Rin, Kento says he'll never lose again, so he refuses to retreat. On the ground, the woman says she never thought she'd be the first to trust the young guy. Kento says the boy is the best. But then suddenly, the devil's arm activates, and a black shadow wraps around our boy and his sword. Screaming, the item says the power suddenly awakened inside him. With a single swing, the arm wipes out the scientist's creation, then starts closing in on the other enemies. Ken manages to block the first hit, Meanwhile, the protagonist is wondering why the hands of God look like they're literally materializing. Freaked out, Arides throws potions at the Black Claws, but his magic gets cancelled out and ends up hitting the white-haired guy instead. Shadow says it's not over yet. The enemy turns just in time and manages to defend himself. Still, he gets a cut on the wrist which makes him lose HP. Kuro says he loves that feeling of power, and that his owner better hurry up so he can absorb everything. On the ground, the researcher asks why the sword is giving off such a sinister aura, and how the kid can stay sane while using it. Ari shows up and says that's only part of what the weapon can do. The hands move in on the scientist, realizing there's no way they can win since even Ken is struggling and determined to get out alive. He grabs more potions and throws them on the ground. It creates a smoke cloud so they can escape. Ken says his time's up, but he'd honestly love to keep the slaughter going. Our boy says he's not letting him get away, but it's too late. The two of them just vanish. Alone with Ari, Shadow asks who she is and how she awakened those abilities in Kuro. She says if he really wants to know, he should go to Cafe Frozen the next day at noon, but only if he's actually interested. Before logging out, she reveals she knows Kento's name, which completely shocks him. Thinking about everything that happened, the protagonist wonders what other rules Kuro knows that he doesn't. Then he decides the only option is to go to the meeting, even if he doesn't want to. Outside, Zaji says his part's done and all the NPCs are somewhere safe. Our boy thanks him while looking at all the creatures the guy took down. We see that as a reward, he got the assassin's coat. On top of that, the mercenary hands him the swordsman's bracer. The protagonist is happy with the gifts. Then the two say goodbye and promise to meet again someday. In the real world, Kagira goes to Cafe Frozen and wonders how he's supposed to figure out which person there is. Ari. Suddenly, someone calls his name. It's her, and by doing that she shows she knows what he looks like, even though he doesn't look the same as in the game. When the protagonist sits down, she introduces herself as Ari, and says it's a pleasure to meet the king, or rather, the heir to the Jinguji group. Spooked, Kento asks how she knows that. She tells him to relax, and says she looked into the info she got from Kuro. In his head, he's like, how can she even have a player's personal info? But he quickly finds out Ari is an engineer who helped create Yijiji Reverse. She got fired when the Jinguji group took over, so now she wants revenge, but she's going to need help. Hearing that makes him remember everything Reito did to him. Kento asks what he gets out of helping her, and says the only reason he came is because he wants to know more about Kuro. Accepting his terms, she says she created the weapon to fight the Jinguji group, and the requirements to get it are super strict because she wanted to find a player who was actually worthy. Our boy finally connects the dots. Arisa says she had to give Kuro to a highly skilled player so the conglomerate wouldn't catch on. Thinking it over, Shadow says he believes her story, but his only goal is to beat King, not take down the entire Jinguji group. He's about to say that, but she says she knows it's hard to fight the king without the right gear. Admitting she's right, he says he's already lost to his brother before, so the engineer asks what he'd think about getting a sponsor, since his streams are blowing up. Kento says he's been thinking about it, but as a newbie, not many people are interested in sponsoring him. Arisa disagrees and says she's part of the Oga group, big enough to go up against the Jinguji group. Turns out the organization is considered one of the 5 biggest conglomerates in the world, and it's owned by her father and older brother, which makes her an heiress. Ari says either way, both of their goals can happen if he agrees to be part of the plan. The protagonist says that's good, but it's not really a good idea to talk about that in that place. All of a sudden, the woman snaps her fingers and everyone inside the cafe freezes. Before she even explains, she says the whole station belongs to the Oga group, so there's no reason to worry. Then she asks again if Kento's willing to help her, while he just stares at her with his mouth hanging open. A month later, inside the game, our boy is watching the Nordic Peak crew. Kuro says they can finally start the real revenge. Agreeing, the protagonist says that now that he's got better gear, he can't afford to screw up, which means it's time to start the hunt. When night falls in Gazef village, the bandits are talking about the rumors that the saboteur is the guildmaster, known as King's little brother. The hands of God show up ready to wipe them out. Then one strike takes 2 assassins' heads clean off. Shadow appears and says they're way too slow. Kuro says the kid's in good shape though, but then he realizes something's off, and that they were the targets from the start. Ken shows up and says as expected the kid's got good instincts. Knowing the mercenary's obsessed with fighting, the protagonist figures he'll have to burn some energy before taking on King. Everyone starts yelling, cheering for the white-haired guy, but out of nowhere, he straight up punches one of his own fans, and says yeah, this is kinda weird, just like he thought. Then he reveals that even though he was ordered to bring in Shadow, what he really wants is to fight him one-on-one. After that, he asks if the kid really is King's little brother. Our boy asks what would happen if he said yes. Ken says he thought joining a guild would be fun, but all he's been doing is hunting NPCs for no real reason, so he's leaving Nordic Peak. The other bandits say that's betrayal. Still, Ken says it'll be way more interesting to watch the protagonist fight King, so he'll go on ahead, and when everything's over, they'll finish the fight they started earlier. Kato agrees and says that if things go the way he expects, he'll be Ken's opponent for the foreseeable future. Seeing the kid vanish, Ken's impressed by his speed and starts laughing. Then he says fun stuff always puts him in a good mood, and even though he hates ganging up on one person, he loves that kind of battle royale. So it doesn't matter how this ends, because the best dessert will be waiting for him afterward. Shadow heads to the village, where Reito is already waiting. When asked about Ken's betrayal, our boy says it looks like his brother's underlings don't really like him. We find out the village is empty, because Kagure made sure to evacuate all the NPCs. Not caring at all, Reito says he was tired of waiting for the fun to start. Activating his skill, the protagonist says this time he's going to beat him. Thinking to himself, King says he got reports about that attribute, but the effects are still unknown, which means he'll need to nullify all damage. Jinguji activates his Imperial Fortress skill. Freaked out, Kuro tells Shadow to wait. Explaining it to the sword, the protagonist says that attribute boosts King's resistance for 3 minutes. Charging in, the knight says his little brother won't even be able to scratch him. Reading the situation, Reito wonders what's up with the kid's HP and why his attacks aren't working. Our boy says he knows what he's thinking, why he's taking damage, because damage only applies when you actually hit your opponent. King gets caught off guard from behind, and says he'll split the ground to seal the kid's movements with Imperial Pulverization. Shadow says even so, he'll be the first one to hurt him. Shouting, Jinguji tells him to get off the horse, and showing his full power, he says no matter how hard he fights, he'll always be a loser. Worried, Kuro says the kid's provoking him way too much, but Kento says that's the plan, because there's a way around the Holy Imperial Formation. Throwing out an attack, King asks if the kid seriously thinks he'll fall for the same trick twice. The sword tells the protagonist to dodge, and we see the explosion can be seen from miles away. When the dust settles, the knight starts laughing, saying that in the end, he'll always be the winner. Appearing behind his opponent, our boy uses his poison dagger, and says that apparently Irides didn't mention his Path of Shadows skill. The king backs off and asks why his HP is dropping. Explaining it, the protagonist says it's because of his dagger, which has Hydra poison in it, and when he activates his Earthquake skill, he says that's the end, because anyone caught in the quake will have their agility cut by 50%. And on top of that, with his Blood Domination attribute, every time the target takes damage, they lose 20% of their abilities. Reito tries to attack, but his body's paralyzed, even with his Imperial Formation active. Our boy says that's because the one thing the formation can't block is direct hits, which includes damage caused by debuffs. Shouting, King asks how the hell his skill is supposed to count as a fortress. Shadow says the formation doesn't make him invincible, and what makes a player good is being able to find answers to their weaknesses. So since his brother's basically still a newbie, he'd like to welcome him to YGG Traverse. The hands of God appear behind Reito. Meanwhile, the protagonist decides to attack from above. King says it's not over, because yeah, he is invincible, while the Holy Imperial Formation is up. Our boy says he's forgetting something. His MP is almost gone. Before landing the final blow, Kento says goodbye to King, all the good times he had with that character flashing through his mind. We see the knight get sliced in half before being swallowed up by the hands of God. With the job done, the protagonist says now it's Oga's turn. In the real world, Reito wonders how he lost to someone so weak. Then he decides to drink some water, but his phone starts ringing. On the other end, his dad asks what the hell he just did, and tells him to turn on the TV, where the whole cheating scheme is getting exposed in a news report. Furious, the man asks if Jinguji is trying to destroy the group just because he's too damn stubborn. Turns out the one who leaked everything was Arisa. She got together with the engineers who were unfairly fired to record a video about everything that happened, and that's how they found out Reito was the one behind it, kicking off the downfall of the Jinguji group. Talking with her, the protagonist asks what's going to happen to his brother and the organization. Ari says the group won't be getting involved with Yunjin Diverse anymore, and they've lost all their revenue. As for the mastermind, he seems to be getting protected, so she couldn't get much info. Our boy says his dad never really cared about him, but he loves Reito. Then they talk about how Arisa went back to working for the game company and got promoted, along with the other engineers. Smiling, Kento says he's looking forward to the updates. The alarm goes off and he says it's time. She tells him to be careful, and he tells her to do the same. Then Shadow returns to the game, where Ken was already waiting. Getting ready, he says he has to keep his promise in front of the crowd watching, including Irides. Shouting, the guy says he's only there because he was forced to be. Ken tells him to enjoy the show, and as he activates his skill, he says a huge duel is about to begin. Our boy and Kuro smile, and then they charge into the fight. The protagonist says they need to win that match, and the sword says it has zero doubt they will.